Hello everyone, welcome to Greasus Goldtooth of the Ogre Kingdoms Second Impressions Guide. Now, I did a few turns to check out how the faction plays out, and of course I have my own conclusions on how it goes. Units, buildings, etc. I'll go through it and in the end provide you with some army compositions you may wish to try in the campaign. As always, this is not an in-depth guide, but it will certainly help you out, and without further ado, let's play with Greasus Goldtooth of the Ogre Kingdoms. So for our short victory, we are required to control two nearby provinces, the Mountains of Morn, located here, and the Worm Pass, pretty straightforward, and to also control, occupy, loot, raise or sack 30 different settlements. It's one of the shortest, for sure. Now, reward is pretty good for that moment in time, so as in +3 recruit rank, all the time for all armies. After just gaining these initial ones, it's pretty helpful throughout the whole campaign. Now, the long victory changes things. So of course requires all the short victory, as always, to occupy, loot, raise or sack 75 different settlements, and then to control 8 of the following settlements, actually. So these are just, if I'm not mistaken, just the settlements, not the provinces, so that eases up. So Nengao over there, Weijin, Newport, then Black Crag, it's pretty far away, Crookback Mountain, Galbaraz. So you can see on the map right there, I hope you're watching that, but let me put like this: Grom Peak, Karak Ungor, Massive Orkal, Ekrund, and Saber Mountain. So most of these are kind of located to the west and not to the east, so going east may not be the most wise decision, but it's going to be tricky. You're always going to have to go at least to the north and to the east, to the west, sorry, or to the west a little bit here. So yeah, it requires you expanding into different locations. That's never a good idea, of course. Now, achieving this will also give you the global recruitment capacity +2 faction-wide. Now, not the best, it's average at best, because most of the time when you probably be recruiting normally, global is usually just to replenish dead units. And you don't need really 2 extra slots for that all the time. Now, Greasus is the Trade Lord, Tribe Stealer, Drake Crush, who he thinks he is, etc. So he enjoys diplomatic relations with other kingdoms, more income from trade tariffs, and more unit mass. Unit mass, pretty decent, it's important for the ogres. Now, in terms of climate, a little bit of a note here. So the only uninhabitable really are magical forests and deserts. So let me add these here to show you. Of course, I have the frozen mountains. These are just the ones I use. Most of these bonuses, or not bonuses, debuffs are equal to the same. So as you can see here, only this small location and these areas right here are really red. Everything else is kind of like yellow, green. So it's one of the best factions to conquer the whole map, truly. So it can be difficult when going against Cetra perhaps, but otherwise you're fine. In terms of the starting location, it is a 3-settlement province, but ogres work slightly different, as we'll see in the mechanics later on. It does have gold, of course, and some tusks nearby, so that's good. They are helpful. Now, you're located in the middle of the mountains, really, so this implies a lot of possible invading enemies from all directions. Expansion may be tricky, but for the beginning, I would say control over the mountains will be important. Then take your path. Either you go to the north, to the Cathay area, to the south first, to dominate against Nurgle, or to the east and to the west and everyone there. It's really your choice, basically, or it will perhaps be directed more for who becomes your friend and your enemy during this the initial part of the campaign. So speaking of diplomacy, the ogres are part of the neutral tide, basically. They're not really enjoyed nor really hated by others. You can see the aversion there for the dwarves are just 25. For Cathay it's 10, and for greenskins it's also non-existent, so, and for Skaven just 10. So you can always improve this very easily. So it depends how you conduct your business, really. Now, you do have good starting relations with Cathay. Over here, I actually got it worse, but of course you don't need to cause this, you know? You can stay on good terms with them. so good outposts would be more probably into the Order Tide. Now, as enemies, anyone, it depends really how the campaign flourishes and how it goes through. Now, you do start with a lot of enemies nearby, as other Ogre factions, and then these dwarves, and then some greenskins, etc. Trade is useful for the faction, so trying to get some good friends is quite essential. Now, for outposts, some ideas, perhaps if you can befriend them, the Cathay armies, of course, some good infantry, missiles, and artillery. The rest you kind of have. Again, with the dwarves, some infantry and artillery, and with the Skaven, anything goes really. Missiles, their elite artillery, their artillery and their elite infantry may prove quite good for your armies. It's up to you, basically. But those are the choices that I would like to explore with while playing with the ogres. Now, let's talk about camps first. You need research to be able to build more, and then you can settle those wherever you wish. It is important that you choose wisely because they have a sphere of influence that provides significant buffs, such as not requiring meat for your armies, which is excellent. Now, they don't have any garrison, but you can recruit units, and basically those will become your garrison over there, of course, over time. In addition, they are where there are major settlements, basically. These are the places where you'll be building most that is important to you, for your big elite units. Now, big names, let's talk about it. It's basically a requirement that gives you possible trait that you will unlock for a certain amount of time. For instance, now I have for this one, for the Shockling of Bees, unit mass plus 30% and melee defense, basically for the next 6 turns, and then I can choose another or trade in other ones. It's a basically let's give a different trait according to the situation that you wish. Now, meat is useful for a variety of things, mainly for them not to, revolt and give you trouble, of course. But in essence, you gain these mostly by battling others, of course. A unique resource you can also offer for in the beginning to have a grain feast before a battle, so that they're more effective in battle. Or you can give them some offerings to the Great Maw. In this case, I got them some campaign movement range. So that's it. For the meat. It's used worldwide, basically. Every army does have their own meat, so be wary of that. Now, finally, we do have the contracts, basically. Let me show you. So in essence, basically, with those contracts, as you can see here, you gain some buffs, of course, from it gives you the mercenary flavor of this faction. You can receive offers from other factions to complete missions and achieve the rewards, these buffs, of course, that can shift and change how the campaign works. Before we go there, there's still another thing that I would like to mention, which is the army abilities. As you can see there, that this member army ability, pretty useful. The army ability of the Butcher Regeneration, it's excellent. They have heal, which is quite not the standard in a neutral to evil faction, basically. And then the Massacre ability as well. So all of these army abilities, they're really cool. They ensure that you can have some different opportunities in battle. They're going to change how you play in the battles as well, which is excellent, of course. More variety is always excellent. Army stances are pretty straightforward. The basic encamp and raid with 50% move penalty there, but it does give you some camp growth there to local camps, so that's nice. And then we have the ambush at 25%, and of course forced march. Noteworthy is the absence of underground, which is important because of your position in the mountains. You're a mountain-based faction that cannot move around the mountains easily, so that's tricky. That's a tricky part indeed. Now, in terms of province edicts, you do have the Chains of a Plague spreading reduction, of course, and more income, some minus corruption, recruitment cost, and local recruitment capacity. This is slightly underwhelming, I explained, because, of course, most of your recruitment will be in the camps, so it's not like this one helps too much. Most of the units that you can build here, you'll see, are not really that more into the late game. So yeah, and then we have control, growth, and less campaign movement range for enemy armies. So not the most influential, especially considering how camps work, but still, of course, we do have some edicts here. Camps, of course, just to reiterate, they do not have any edicts or anything like that. As for buildings, let's start with the basic settlements first. You do have a landmark in the Great Hall of Greasus that provides you with some nice income there, and also a gold mine there, so pretty straightforward one. But let's have the most basic one, I believe the Valley of Horns. There we go. So it's quite limited, of course. It includes only 2 buildings for military, and all that you get is Iron Guts, the best unit there, and some Gorgers. Not bad units per se, but you will need more than this to just win the game, of course. And of course you do have some Gnoblars, but yeah. And in essence it has some four infrastructure buildings. One for growth and replenishment, another for income, another for meat that demolishes your income by half, and control and corruption. Pretty straightforward ones, of course. Most of the time what you want is actually the camps, and those are the important ones for you to grow your armies. Exactly. So you can build nearly every building, okay, especially if you have this building, for instance, already in the minor settlement nearby. Well, no need to build it a second time, right? So you still, if you wish, you have 5 buildings for full military, all with their effects, of course. Some with army abilities, some with recruit rank, some with heroes to recruit, all excellent. Then we have some defense that are more like the infrastructure, really. One provides replenishment and the army ability Gluttony, which is a regeneration ability, which is excellent. You know, and the other one provides less upkeep for all units, great, and income from post-battle loot to everyone around you. Now, for typical infrastructure, you do have an income building, a meat generated building, a hero recruitment building, basically for butchers, and gives you some leadership for armies in the circle of influence, and also the meat gained from battles, which is excellent as well. And then we have the camp growth and local recruitment capacity, which is, it's good. It follows the same principle of making sure these camps become your military provinces in essence. Now, in terms of research, it's pretty good as well. It gives the necessary camp limits, which is excellent, as you can see there. Camp limit is one. So it also gives some army abilities, some good campaign stuff, the typical stuff. So that is excellent in ensuring that you get some nice unit buffs going on, okay, and also some good adjustments to the mechanics, such as, of course, the population for deployed camps, camp limit. You see, that sort of idea always important. Okay, the most important one later on is this: camp limit +1 for every level 5 camp built. This is what essentially allows you to keep building camps and expanding more and more. As you know by now, Legendary Lord or Lord specific skills, then Yellow Line or Combat or Magic, Red Line or Army, Blue Line or Campaign. That's what you have. Starting with the Blue Line, note that it doesn't have replenishment. Now this is just for the Greases and for the Tyrants actually. It does have reduced upkeep right there, and it has some income-based buffs, such as, you know, giving less recruitment costs, more income from raiding, more income from sacking settlements, etc. But nothing too out of the ordinary here. However, it's a bit lacking in replenishment. Greasus does have replenishment here when he's over Tyrant buff, you know, and he also gets some diplomatic relations, some bonus versus lodge, and some armor and leadership for everyone in the army, which is good, but it does lack a little bit into the replenishment rate there. Now, Slaughtermasters, it's a different thing, because they do have the healer ability right there for more replenishment, and they can even choose this one, should you wish, for even more replenishment, which is excellent. So they're focused more into magic and replenishment, Tyrants more into basically buffing their army and more into income, perhaps. So yeah, a noteworthy one is this, Reader of Portents, Research Raid. It's excellent for any character to be able to have this. And also the Slaughter Masters can also give you more meat provided by camps. So it's excellent in many ways. A good combination between Slaughter Masters and Tyrants would be in order for sure. Now, in terms of the heroes, let me show you here. You do have 3. The Hunter, which increases mobility. Then we have the Fire Bellies, basically a fire dude, fire magic dude. And then we have the Butcher, which also replenishes troops, and you can have the Lore of Beasts or the Lore of the Great Maw. Pretty interesting ones. Yeah, of course you'll need the camp to be able to recruit them, so that's something to keep in mind of. The red line for the Ogre Kingdoms is quite efficient, and it has most of the early game units that you can easily avoid right here, unless you wish to make a campaign in the early game easier with them. So then you have mostly all of the elite troops around here, so most of my armies are made around this area. Of course, the Man-Eater's skill line, does imply that you have an anti-infantry, a shielded unit, some missile troops, and anti-large, all in the same, which is excellent, really cool. Now, Greasus has just some basic upkeeps here for Iron Guts, some weapon strength for Ogre Bulls, some armor and leadership for all the whole army. Nothing to write home about. The unit mass overall that he gives for the faction is what you may use to plan out his army. So nothing wrong with going some Man-Eaters and some good old Crushers right there, just to have that crushing unit mass charge going on. This should be an excellent army against any foe, basically. And the same thing if you wish to add just some monsters. Notice how effective, how efficient the red line skills are there. For other combinations, well, you can go into some, never wrong with some Man-Eaters and some missile troops, or just having a sort of ambush idea here with the Gorges, and then some giants just for fun. Why not? And this last one is really a fun stack because it's all ranged, but nevertheless these guys can hold the line pretty well. So I would put the trappers in front, these ones slightly behind, and then all the other missile troops on their backs. Who knows what kind of damage this army can dish out. Certainly some interesting, and you can notice how efficient they are in terms of the red line skills, so also really cool for that. As a final conclusion, they are a brutal, massive army. It is fun to use, although not the typical style because of the lack of infantry. Synergy between all the meat and the all you can get with the buffs, growth, replenishment, it's all nice. And you can also play the faction more into a defensive style or even a rush-based army as you wish. Lords of Magic are also interesting and different to see on the battlefield. Now, for your army, poor infantry, really poor. Great monstrous infantry, some of the best in the game. Great missiles, great monstrous cavalry, good single entities. It does lack flying units and it lacks numbers. Be wary of that because most of your units, of course, are comprised of just a few elements, so that may come into consideration in the battles, of course. Replenishment is good. There are some buffs that will assist it, and the fact that the climate helps most of the time is excellent. I believe now it is time to either be a good ogre or a bad ogre, with Greasus Goldtooth as your leader.